Medicine changes when future doctors learn from real women, not just textbooks. Rice Board Fellow and Baylor Med student Shivanki Juneja came to the Rose to see how nonprofits really deliver women's health care. On postpartum floors and in safety net clinics, she's met young moms who don't even know what to ask, only that they need help. Now she's headed into OB GYN, determined to fight for prevention, access, and judgment-free rooms where every woman feels safe telling the truth. Share this episode with a student in your life and with family and friends, and consider making a donation at therose.org so more women get care, not confusion.
Welcome to Let's Talk About Your Breast, a podcast brought to you by The Rose, Breast Imaging Center of Excellence and a Texas treasure. I'm Dorothy Gibbons, your host and co-founder of The Rose. During this season, you'll also be hearing from co-host Roxanne Hayford and others as we bring you stories from survivors, physicians, caregivers, researchers, employees, and supporters. These are real people sharing difficult times, celebrations, and personal stories of hope, despair, and faith. We welcome your suggestions, and we would also love to hear about your story. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for supporting The Rose and our mission. Together we are saving lives. Shivanki, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm so glad this worked out.
Yes, no, thank you so much for having me. I have been so honored to be a part of The Rose in all forms, but also today. It's really nice of you to have me.
Oh, good. So tell us how you came to The Rose to begin with.
Absolutely. So I am part of a dual degree program with Baylor College of Medicine and Rice University, where I'm getting my MD and then as well as my MBA from Rice. And during my MBA, they told me about this program called the Rice Board Fellows, which essentially matches interested MBA students to a nonprofit where you're kind of able to be a member of the board and see what it's like to work in a nonprofit, but do it in an educational sense. So you're a non-voting member and you kind of are just there to soak up as much information as possible. And I, as someone coming in from more of a healthcare background, less of a business background, and knowing that what I would be using my MBA for would most likely be working in the community space or kind of adding on to already a career in healthcare, was really interested in learning how nonprofits work within the community. And so that's why I applied, and I let them know that my career path was women's health, and that was my main focus. And I said, I'd be happy to go to any nonprofit, but if you could find one that had this niche that I was interested in, that would be amazing. And then they were kind enough to match me here, and I got to have this experience.
So it was women's health or breast?
It was women's health, because going into the MBA, and now my interest is to be an OB GYN after medical school, obstetrics and gynecology. And I knew that that would be the space. Women's health is what I would be doing for the rest of my life. So I knew if I could get experience in that. And then I told you as well when I first onboarded is that I had experience with the Rose from the other side as a medical student, seeing the Rose bands at our different health fairs and things like that.
Right.
So I had some experience beforehand. So when I was matched, I felt really, really grateful that this is the one that found me.
So that community work you did, that was just on your own or part of Baylor? Or
Yeah, so some parts were part of Baylor. Like when I first started medical school, I volunteered with formerly incarcerated women through a home called Angela House, and we did some educational work with them. And then I also worked with underserved middle schoolers through another project. But one of the community projects I did on my own, actually concurrently while I was on the board at the Rose, was called Moms to Moms, and it was through something called the Albert Schweitzer Fellowship, which is another, staple in our nonprofit world here in Houston. And I was lucky enough to apply for that fellowship and get that fellowship as well. And I had two amazing co-fellows, and we were tasked with expanding a postpartum health literacy program at Ben Taub and Lyndon B. Johnson Hospital, which is part of our Harris Health Hospital system, which is the safety net hospital here in Houston. And so that was kind of, while I'd done other community work as volunteers and even as leaders, that was kind of the first time where I was tasked with, this is the project, this is the organization, expand it, ensure it has good impact, ensure you're serving the population that you say you're serving, and then also being in charge of the volunteers and all of the stuff and having to deal with things like funding and all of that. So I think that was my most impactful and my biggest community project. But yeah, I've also been involved in smaller ones as well.
So did you always want to be a doctor?
That's a good question. I think yes and no. I always gravitated towards things that were in the fields of medicine. Science was always my favorite subject in school. And I've been doing community service work and volunteering in clinics and things like that since I was in high school. And so I was always drawn to both that interesting scientific aspect of medicine and also the service aspect where you are helping people, and that is the main focus of what you do. But it is a long journey, and it requires a lot of sacrifice. So I think it would be naive to say I never questioned once whether it was actually what I wanted to do. And so I did go back and forth. I had a lot of other interests. I loved writing and art and things like that. And knowing that if I did choose this path, it just meant less time for those things. So I went back and forth, but ultimately just all the experiences I had, it just kept bringing me back. And ultimately it's what I wanted out of a career, something that was intellectually stimulating and exciting, but also at its heart, just like took care of people and was helpful to society. And
so this wasn't something coming from the family?
Oh, no. My mom is a doctor, and I did get to see kind of her experience, but she was always open and honest about the sacrifice it took and how difficult that journey it was. So she in no means ever pushed me in this direction. She said, please explore every other opportunity there is. And so I'm very grateful that my family was supportive of all my back and forth. So I was like, I want to do this. And they were like, okay. And then I was like, maybe something else. And then ultimately, I landed upon my own. I just felt like it had everything I wanted.
Has Houston always been home?
Houston has always been home. I left for 4 years in college. I went to the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. So I had that exposure. And then I came back for medical and MBA school.
So that our listeners understand, you're sitting on the board.
Yes.
Meetings, during the board meetings.
Correct.
You're just like another board member. You don't have the voting privilege but what did you now and believe me, we love having the Rice Fellows here. But I'm always watching y'all thinking, what did you really learn?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an agenda. It's a lot of finance. It's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think of course. Coming in, it's definitely overwhelming and you get a lot of things thrown at you. But I think one of the greatest parts of it is we learn a lot of these concepts in class. Like I took accounting, I took finance. We learned what these different cash flow statements and things are supposed to look like and what they mean. But you always learn it in such an abstract way. And so kind of coming to the Rose and getting to listen through these board meetings and even being on different committees and kind of talking through it, I was like, oh, this is what they were talking about in class. And this is how you're able to apply it in a real world setting. And this is why this little thing we learned was important and why we can carry it forward. And then specifically for me, an application that made sense and something that I would want to do in the future. It wasn't just I was thrown into this lab and I was learning. It was like, okay, maybe one day when I would maybe want to be in the nonprofit space, or if someone asked me what my opinion on a community project was or things like that, I now have this lived experience where I'm taking these abstract things that I learned in my gen ed classes and applying them to something I'm really passionate about and I think is wonderful to the community. And so I think that was the main learning, was just connecting those two.
So, Shivanki, do you think you're really going to be in community public health type work when you finish?
I mean, it's a long journey, and the next 4 years for me are going to be dedicated to residency, where I get the clinical skills to be a good healthcare provider. That's definitely going to be my short-term focus over the next couple of years, because I think that's going to be really important to my foundation going forward. But I think as a person, I come back to this career and I come back to women's health because I'm so passionate about the population and about health equity and health access. And why? That's such a good question. I think I just always gravitated to learning people's stories and learning from people's lived experiences. When I was in high school, I was a volunteer in like one of the Harris Health clinics, and I got to talk to a lot of patients that had a lot of different lived experiences and different things on their mind and different reasons they were coming to the clinic and things that they needed to learn, and going forward, I kind of kept that same energy when I was reaching out to different community projects. I just wanted to learn people's stories. And in doing that, I've been so honored that they have been so vulnerable to share things with me and share their difficulties that I almost feel like if I'm going into this field and I'm saying that what I want to do is help people, it would be wrong for me to just have this black box on this like overarching issue that's happening. Like I can go in and see my patients and leave and pretend like everything's fine and I saw all the patients I need to see today. But then to know in the back of my mind that there is this overarching thing where there are people that don't have access to healthcare. There are people that are not getting the healthcare that they deserve. Just feels wrong. So I think my lived experience kind of brought me here. And so while life is long and I'm never going to be able to guarantee anything, I think it's a passion of mine that's going to continue and something that I hope to, once I get the clinical skills, revisit in different ways, whether that is the nonprofit space, whether that is just advocacy that I do on my own as a healthcare provider, or whether it's working within my own hospital system and just in small ways trying to make it better in the place I am. I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but I know it's something that's going to be.
So was there any one story that really stood out to you?
One of the most impactful things, and I touched on this as well when people asked me why OB GYN, was when I was a Moms to Moms volunteer. So this was before I was leading the organization. I was just a volunteer. The way it's set up is we go to the postpartum floor and we ask the patients, like, is there anything that you need help with? What resources can we provide? We also have educational pamphlets. So if they want to know a little bit more about breastfeeding or things like that, we give them any information that they need. And so this specific patient, at first I came in, she was 19 years old. This was her first kid. And she didn't really have other support outside of just her and her kid. And so she asked me one question just about contraception because the nurse had come in earlier and asked her, oh, what contraception are you thinking when you leave? And she honestly had never been on contraception before, didn't know the different options. And so she said, do you have a pamphlet on that? And so that started the conversation. And then it immediately turned into an almost hour-long conversation of like, okay, this is my first kid. What does that look like? What are pediatricians' visits? How does breastfeeding work? And it became this conversation that wasn't just, I'm a volunteer giving you information. It's like, I'm a person that's hearing your story and trying to internalize what you're going through and to the best providing support and care. And I think that's what's special about being in women's health is oftentimes it's not someone coming in and just being like, I have these symptoms, please help. It's like a woman coming to you with a vulnerable story saying, this is the position I'm in. And so I think those kinds of stories, and that one in particular, showed me the importance of listening to women and also making sure that there is space for them to get the resources they need when they're in those situations. And so I was able to give her some resources because those are available, because moves have been made in this city to promote health equity. But if we were in a different place or a different time, I don't know if I would be able to give her those same options. And so that's why I think access as well is a big issue.
But what I'm hearing is that she really didn't even know what she needed.
It's true. Yeah.
And that's what we see so many times.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's not just, it's that health literacy, and I think that's a big word for something that we get caught up in, but it's really not knowing. Having never had an experience with anything like that, I know with our breast cancer patients, just going to different doctors gets confusing. Why can't this one doctor do everything? I'm going to the doctor. May never have been to a doctor before. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, it's just it's hard for a lot of people to understand that we have this huge range of knowing and understanding education. And I love that lived experience. If you've never been to a doctor, then you have a whole different image of what's going to happen, what's going to go on.
Absolutely. Yeah, the healthcare system does not make it easy. Even when you do get referrals, you're like, who am I supposed to call? Is someone supposed to be calling me? What's going? No, it's incredibly difficult. And that's why hearing different people's stories is important because you don't know what they've done. And if unless you ask them what is your experience with healthcare? How did you kind of navigate this? You wouldn't know because everyone is.
Did you see a lot of women without a lot of support?
I think the population I was working in this is the safety net hospital of Houston. So oftentimes people are coming here that are uninsured or under different circumstances where this is the only healthcare they can access. So I think to a certain extent, yes, I think support also means different things. Of course, there's financial support, but then you have familial support where you have a partner or someone else that's willing to share that burden. Or the opposite, where they have these big families and all of this support that way, but then they're worried about, okay, well, how do we access SNAP benefits and how does this work and where can I even get my kid to see a pediatrician? And so I think it's never easy, this process of motherhood, and if we're being existential, being a woman, but I think seeing these people in those circumstances, I think it's not uncommon for people to be unsupported and turn to healthcare as maybe some sort of way to get more support.
Right. Did you know about the Rose before Rice?
Just briefly in that when I volunteered, I would see the Rose, and I just knew that it was a place that we could refer people, but I didn't understand kind of like intimately how it worked. And I also kind of, the main thing I got to see through this experience was the mission moments and see the actual tangible aspect of the Rose. I always knew it was a pillar in our community and that it did good, but then to actually hear from the women whose lives it saved, that was definitely a different aspect of things that I got to learn more about.
So what could I have done, the Rose have done during your fellowship that would have made it even richer or more impactful?
That's such a hard question to answer because it was already so impactful. Everyone was so kind and open to welcoming me. I came in and I self-admitted that I'm coming from a healthcare background, not a business background. And so I'm here to learn because there was so much I didn't know. And I feel so honored that you guys took me under your wings, were so vulnerable with everything. And I got to be on like different committees and hear about different things that were going on, and then was so honored to be invited to things like the luncheon where I was able to kind of talk face to face with a lot of the people that were part of the organization. And so I think that's a tall order because this was a really wonderful experience. And I don't know if there was much more you could have done to make it impactful.
It's so good to hear because it never seems like we have enough time to do what we think we'd love to be doing. But my goodness, I think probably, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but did you see within this organization that strength of the women that, isn't it amazing?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's certainly not my voice that's out there in the community. It's all of theirs. And the way that they care and really, really go the extra mile for the patients. Oh, my gosh.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to family.
Okay.
Was mother the mentor in your life, or was there someone else?
So, I mean, your mom is always your mentor. And her being in medicine as well and her life story.
What did your dad do?
He was originally a mechanical engineer, but now has pivoted more to kind of like the finance business side of things, and works in kind of like oil and gas in the energy space. But, and of course, also a mentor as well. Both of my parents are wonderful. I wouldn't be here without them. But another mentor I have that means a lot to me, her name is Dr. Louise McCullough. She's in the Department of Neurology at UT Health Houston, here in Houston. And I worked with her the summer between my junior and senior year of college. She had a research program, boot camp essentially for undergrads that were interested in maybe doing science or healthcare, just kind of wanted more exposure to research. And so I did her program, and then she was kind enough to offer me a full-time position for my gap year between my when I finished undergrad and before I started med school. I took one gap year and I worked for her as a clinical research assistant. And personally, she's a very important person with so many responsibilities, but she took the time to always meet with me, just a college kid, and be like, what things do you want out of life? What are your goals? How can I help you get there? She wrote me an amazing letter of recommendation when I needed it for medical school. And so on a personal level, I really felt supported by her, and she always poured in as much resources as she could into me. But then also seeing her career path was inspirational as well. She is an MD, PhD, which oftentimes you get those degrees simultaneously. You apply to one program and you're able to kind of go straight through and graduate with both. But she actually did them separately, where she got one degree first and then went back and got another degree. Ooh. And it's basically kind of the ethos and the things that she would always say is, look, life is long. There's no abstract deadlines. You might think they're milestones you have to reach by a certain point. Mm-hmm. But as long as you live your life by doing what interests you, what you find inspirational, everything will come into place. And so definitely one of the supporters for when I got my MBA as well, because you think, you're like, okay, I'm in medicine. This is already so many years. I'm going to take another year. I already took one before school. It was definitely in the back of my mind where I kept being like, should I just go straight through and find the end, and then maybe I'll find my way back to this? But I think she was definitely a supporter where I don't think you'll ever regret learning something new or experiencing something new, but you might regret not doing it. And so kind of,
wow, great,
yeah,
great advice.
Yeah. So she's always been a champion of, it's okay to take the non-traditional path, especially if you feel like it's going to enrich you.
She's still a friend?
Yes, I still check in with her as much as possible, which she's so kind to do, given it's been, I guess, almost 5 years since I've worked with her, but she still checks in and emails. And yeah, no, I credit her with a lot of how I'm here today. She definitely gave me a lot of support.
Yeah, but you have a lot of stick-to-itiveness, too.
I guess so. Yeah, it's a combined effort, for sure.
What's the hardest thing for you?
I think one thing that in this stage of my life I'm trying to kind of parse through is I've been so lucky that I've had such diverse experiences up till now, getting this MBA, getting to do these community projects. I've also done a little bit of research, and I've done advocacy, and I've kind of just tried to extract as much knowledge out of everything as possible. But now I'm kind of being tasked with what am I going to do with it? As I'm graduating and I'm moving on to the next step, it's, okay, you've learned all these things, but what are you actually passionate about? What do you actually want to do with all of these things? And how are you going to do it? Not just tangentially and generally describing things that you care about.
What are you passionate about?
Well, all of the things that we mentioned, I think being a part of women's health equity, trying to be a person that's curious and learns always and be excited by life and be excited by what I'm doing, but also trying to pour back into the community and in my small way. This is going to be a little broad, but make the world a better place, if you will. And so I think those are things I'm passionate about, but I think now trying to figure out how I can take all of these things that I've learned and done and turn them into something
that's a pretty big question.
It's a big question. But yeah, you asked what's difficult. This is what keeps me up at night if you want to know. Sometimes I wonder kind of what the next step is and what's next. And I think it's just a part about growing. As I enter my late 20s, it's the time.
I was going to ask you how old you were.
Yes, no, it's okay. You can ask. Yeah. No, I think
how did this young woman get to be so wise? I mean, those are just I know. Those are profound questions.
Yeah. I appreciate it, but I think, that is just the time in our lives. The young, your late 20s, and then one day entering my 30s, it's the time where you kind of consolidate all the lived experiences of your 20s, and you go, okay, now I've done it. What do I do with it? So that's I think the hardest part going next is just being okay with the uncertainty, but also looking forward to it in different ways.
Oh, I think that's pretty good place to be in a lot of ways.
I guess so. I guess, yeah.
If you could change one thing in healthcare, like it is right now, you know how it is.
Yes.
That you could make that change, what would it be?
That's such a difficult question. And as you said, like it is right now, I think one of the interesting things about healthcare and kind of learning more from the business side of things as well is that it's this weird juxtaposition of this is such a big part of like our economy and how much resource we pour into it. But then at the same time, we see that some of our health outcomes also don't measure up to what they should be in proportion to how much we're spending it. So it is this very, very niche and different thing than anything else when it comes to that. But I think one thing I don't know if necessarily it would be a full change, but one thing I'm passionate about, and this is an apt audience, but I would have said this anywhere else, I think preventative healthcare is one of the most important parts about healthcare. I think a lot of times it's not talked about or invested in because it's not the flashy thing to do. And I think if we as a society really poured into things like screening, things like lifestyle intervention early on in patients' lives, I think overall that would improve the health of our society, but also the burden that is placed on our healthcare system. And maybe if we turned our focus to primary care, to preventative health a little bit more and bolster it, I think long term that would be to us.
Do your
good.
colleagues think that way?
I think yes and no. I think no one can discount the importance of primary care, but I think it depends on who you talk to and at what level of their career. I mean, by no means am I saying that the specialist care is not important. What they do requires years of training and years of education. And if you hear about...
But you're talking about a cultural change.
In a cultural change, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And so I think within healthcare, it's definitely something that is talked about and championed, but I think the way healthcare is set up right now, it's not set up to incentivize that. So I think sometimes you have to kind of have that trade-off where...
We're still set up for the symptoms. We're not set up for
Exactly.
let's see what we can do to keep from getting there.
From even getting
and
to
we're
that place.
also pouring so much money into end of life that we don't put at the beginning. And like you said, so much of that is routine.
Yes.
But it's not for everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if I could change one thing, it would just be that more people agreed with that cultural shift and see what impact it would have.
So how are you going to encourage your patients? Because you're going into being an OBGYN.
Correct.
Are you interested in the baby side or in the...
Right now, I'm because the next 4 years is going to be both.
Both.
So I'm interested in all of it. I've spent a lot of time doing electives in maternal fetal medicine, which is high risk pregnancy. So I've enjoyed that, but I also have worked a little bit in the infertility space with like REI and IVF and things like that, and I've also found that interesting. And there's things I haven't even seen yet, and I'm using the next 4 years to discover. So I'm not sure yet, but both are.
How are you going to encourage women to put themselves first?
A difficult question. I think
As a physician now.
yes. My belief has always been if you arm your patients with the knowledge and the resources within your power, and you serve as that place where this is a judgment-free zone. You can be honest with me, and then I will receive what you say and give back to you in the way I can within my means. If you provide that space, that dialogue, and you give them the information they need and you give them the resources that they need to reach out to or that they could have access to, that in itself can bolster someone and make them feel that they are, as you put it, someone that needs to be put first. And so I think just in those interactions and just in the way that you communicate with your patients and provide a space for them to be honest with you, sometimes that they don't have that in other places. And so just knowing that you can tell me anything, I'm going to tell you what you need to know, and then I want you to walk out of here with the belief that you have knowledge and you can advocate for yourself and you can say these things because they're true, and having that interaction and kind of creating that space, I'm hoping. Well,
Oh, no, I think you'll get there. But do you know how powerful that is?
Yeah.
That is a cultural shift, too. We never have encouraged patients to have a safe space to talk about anything. You're safe here. You're giving them permission to be them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with no judgment.
Exactly. And I really see that in my colleagues and things. And so I think this next shift and this next group of physicians are going to be that change, because I think we've spent a lot of time meditating on that in medical school and how to be that space for patients and how to kind of build back this trust that I think a lot of times patients are not giving us as much anymore, and how to repair what was broken. And so I have a lot of faith in my future colleagues as well.
Well, I guarantee if they're anything like you, and if they're as passionate and clear, you're so clear on what needs to happen. Yes.
I appreciate you saying that. That's very kind.
Then we have a lot to look forward to. Thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Oh, I want to know how it ends 4 years from now.
I know. It's a long journey, but if you're willing to handle the suspense for that long, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you again for being with us.
No, thank you. And a big thank you as well for including me in the Rose this past year. It's an invaluable experience, and I'm so grateful. And then an even bigger thank you for everything you do for the Houston community. And the Rose has always been a pillar. And like I said, as a medical student, I would see it in all our fairs and know that it would be a place that patients could go and receive care. And so I appreciate everything that you've done for the city of Houston.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you for joining us today on Let's Talk About Your Breasts. This podcast is produced by Speak Podcasting and brought to you by The Rose. Visit therose.org to learn more about our organization. Subscribe to our podcast, share episodes with friends, and join the conversation on social media using hashtag Let's Talk About Your Breasts. We welcome your feedback and suggestions. Consider supporting The Rose. Your gift can make the difference to a person in need. And remember, self-care is not selfish. It's essential.